today we're going to do these trees. So we've got our canvas with three sets of trees in them, and you only needed to split your canvas into 3 separate spots. So and then we'll go from there, and we'll just paint some interesting trees. We're going to take 3 deep breaths and get into our state, our art state. So we'll take 3 deep breaths in, and at the top of the breath, just hold your breath for a moment or just for a second, and then release that breath. And second deep breath, we'll do the same, and third as well. But in between those breaths, while you're in that moment of pause, just look around or find something or think of something that gives you joy, so that we get into a really happy state while we're painting these trees and while we spend this valuable hour together. So with that, we're going to start. So first, deep breath in and hold it and smile and release. And second, deep breath in and hold it for a second and release. And third, deep breath in and hold it for a second and release. And give yourself a smile. It feels good inside. It's good to feel happy. It's all right to feel happy. We're allowed that, to be in that state. So give yourself permission for that. And with that, I'll just recount what we'll need. So paper towel, your water, brushes. What am I going to use for brushes? I've got a big brush. I have a number 6 brush. It's a fairly big brush. It's not huge wide, but it's the biggest of all of them so far. I have a 0 in case I want to get into some tiny branches, and I will use a 3. So 1, 3, and 6 pointed brush. And if you have on hand a gift card, a credit card, we might want to use the edges for some of the grasses at the bottom. That's always a nice way to make grasses. You have a moment if you need to go and grab one of those. It's the cheapest use of a credit card you'll get today, I think. So, and our paints today are blue, red, yellow, ochre, purple, and black, and maybe some other colors. And let's draw a card. So if someone wants to open their mic and just say stop, and I'll pull a card.
Stop.
Stop. I got a double stop, so thank you. And this is about saying yes for things. Wow, there you go. That's fun. All right. So let me just turn my camera around and I'll have a look. I have drawn the trees on. You did not need to draw the trees on. That was not a requirement. We're just going to paint trees as we see them. It'll be a fun way to do it. Let me just turn my camera down. There we go. There, oh, there we go. All right, so there's my canvas. Hopefully you can see that. And we're going to move from 1/3 to the next to the last. So with my large brush and water, I'm going to dip into my blue. Now it doesn't matter what color blue you use. If you want cobalt blue, if you want cerulean blue, if you want, it doesn't matter. It's entirely up to you. We're going to paint the top 1/3 of this canvas just in this section. I'm just going to paint that blue. So I'm doing a wet on dry, so that's wet paint on a dry surface. And I'm just popping that blue right up onto that top section. Now, and it's also okay if you have highs and lows in colors, lights and darks. If it's a little bit lighter in one spot, darker in another spot. And some of you might want to put clouds on. Some of you might not want to bother. But if you want to put a cloud on, using a paper towel, you'll just press that paper towel onto your canvas, and you have clouds. So that might look especially nice with the tree with the cloud behind it. That's entirely up to you. Let's see if that's any, well, that's maybe a bit better to see. All right, and we're going to use that same color and paint the bottom part of our canvas. And we can go right over, right across. We're just doing the bottom third. We're not quite the bottom third, but just a little bit at the bottom. I'm going to paint that blue. And we won't need to worry about clouds because this is water and our land at the bottom. And it doesn't have to be completely even. If you have streaks or paintbrush marks, lines in it, that's okay. I'm going into a different blue and I'm moving on to the canvas in the middle. So I'm using a different blue. So I'm going to use ultramarine blue. So I'm going to put an arch. Just an arch. And I'm going to come across. So we're only doing this, the center section. And it's a different color blue. It's a different kind of sky. Different temperature. And with that same color blue, I'm going to paint the look of mountains. And I'm going to fill that all the way down into the bottom. And you can have some points on there. It doesn't have to be rounded. It can be more pointy. That's up to you. And next I'm going to paint my third section with red. So whatever color red you have, I have carmine red. It's kind of a pinky red and I prefer it. So I'm just going to go across the top of the sky and I'm going to bring that down on an angle. And I'm just going to fill that in, no white spots in there. And with the same red, I'm going to paint some mountains. And I'm going to bring that all the way down to the bottom again. So by now our first page, or our first first third will be dry. And I'm coming into yellow. I'm still using my number 6 brush, fairly large brush. I'm going to stick with this until I get into some finer details. But you want to paint out a number 8. Paint out a number 8. Leave the center open. And once you have that painted, you can paint everything else around it yellow. Right down to the water's edge, right along the side, all the way up to the top, or to where the sky meets. So if you mail cards or letters to people, this is especially nice, something like this, to add in with just a small note, just to say, hi, how are you, thinking of you. It's almost a gift that you're giving with your letter, something you would have painted, or it's a nice bookmark if you're looking for an idea for something to give to a group of people. You could do a series of bookmarks and give them away. And now the very far right hand side, I'm going to move into ochre. So between the reds, I'm going to paint this ochre. And if that red's not quite dry and picks up a little bit of that color, that's okay. You'll end up a little bit orangey. It's all right. In the center, I'm going to put in some purple. So I'm going to run purple on an angle towards that red spot on the other side, and I'm going to fill in almost a half moon shape in purple. And let that purple come right up to the blue. So I still have a gap. I'm going to put ochre in the gap, but before I do that, I'm going to add in some more mountains. And I'm going to put make these mountains purple. And we'll need to let this dry before we put on the ochre. So we'll let that dry a little bit. And we'll see where we are with that. The yellow seems pretty dry. I think if I start to put a tree on there, I may have a problem. So let's work with the ground underneath. at the very bottom on the left-hand side, your first picture, we're going to paint the earth. And this is in black. It doesn't need to be completely level. I'm going on an angle. It'll give a nice dimension. But as far as you can have some bumps, some highs and lows in it. It doesn't have to be completely straight. This is black, your earth on the bottom. Now I'll move over to the third one. We're still letting this dry. So I'm coming over and I'm going to put some mountains in on the third one at the bottom in black. This again is black. So I have a little bit of blue sneaking in the side there. That's okay. I'll come back and I'll put a little bit of red on there once I know that's completely dry. So coming into the center, that purple should be dry. And so now I'm going to put a little bit of ochre in there, but I'm going to put a lighter ochre. So I'm adding water, just thinning it down a little bit. So it's a little bit lighter. So we'll come back to our first picture where I have this yellow, and this yellow is dry now. So I'm putting on black again. I'm going to put on a landscape. So this is my land. You can see my black is sneaking into my ochre. There we go. So what we'll have is a reflection. It just will be the sun showing. So I'm just going to put a very tiny line in between the middle of that 8, just to break up land and water. And I'll just touch up that ochre again where the black was bleeding through. There we go. And remember, this is just a piece of paper, so if it doesn't turn out exactly the way you want the first time round, you can do it again, or maybe you have 2 out of 3 that you really like that you want to save or give away. You can also laminate these, and they make, as I said, beautiful bookmarks. So if you have a laminator or have a friend or know someone that has a laminator, it's a wonderful way to create. There are large deciduous trees or evergreen trees in the forest here coming up behind the mountains. So we're going to create those. And I'm going to use my zero brush. And I'm just going to start to create trees just by making a stick. And then I'm going to do a swizzle stick effect. So I'm just wiggling this brush back and forth to give me the look of an evergreen tree. So once I've done this, if I want to fill this out a little bit, I can add a few branches here and there, but I've got the basis of my tree. I can make it look fuller on this side. I can put a little stick up at the top, but the basis of this tree is just a stick. And then I'm just going to swizzle down smaller to larger. Trees are always larger at the bottom. And then I can add on different branches here and there, just little strokes, just to fill in. So starting from the base of this mountain, I'm coming up with a straight stroke, and I'm going to take it, may not just be as straight as ever, but now I'm going to just do a swizzle stick from smaller to larger. There's my tree in the center. If I want to add little details, little elements, make it a little bit darker in spots, I can, but it's supposed to look fairly sparse. It is a silhouette, so just beside that, I'm just going to add a really tiny stick. Just a few branches on it. It's a very tiny bush or tree. I'll do a bigger one up beside it. Going to be the tallest one, up, right up. And I'll just put a couple of little dots just to indicate that it goes higher. And it's kind of sparse, this one. I'm just going to do a stick up the center between the two. Not even all the way up to the top, and just a few little branches, just a little bit of swizzling out, very, very fine. Another one at the side. And bigger at the bottom than the top. Keep that in mind. And just to balance it out, a little tiny one in the middle, just struggling to get some sunlight too. And I'm not able to read your chat, Linda. Yes, and I'll talk to you at the end about that, Linda. So if we can wait till the end, that would be great. So I have my trees at the end. I don't have any trees or a cactus in the center, and I don't have my tree on my left-hand side. But we are, believe it or not, at halftime. You've done a lot of work at this point, so congratulations. So while you're finishing up what you're working on at this point, I'll just read our card for today. It says, I say yes to being a better receiver. When you are willing to receive, a gift appears. Funny, have you ever said that when you were somewhere and you said, I'm willing to receive, I'm open to receiving, and suddenly the doors open. So that's the card says, I say yes to being a better receiver. When you are willing to receive, a gift appears. So just say yes sometimes. It's just the best thing. All right, now I'm switching back from I was using my 6 and I was using my 0, but I'm going to a number 3 brush to do my tree on this side. So with these clouds in the background, I think this tree will look quite nice. If you put clouds in there, if you didn't, I still think it will look nice. So I'm going to take this tree all the way up. I'm just going to stop about there because I'm going to start to add branches once I get a little higher. But I want to give this a little bit bigger base, bigger trunk. So this is just black, it's a silhouette. And to make those branches, I'm going to shift to a smaller brush. If you don't have a steady hand, this is a perfect project. They don't have to be straight branches. And add as many branches as you like. We're going to put some leaves on here. They will, if you want to put green leaves on, you can, but because it's a silhouette, typically it's black. If you want, you can put on more branches. You could have one coming right out of the side if you like. And for leaves on this tree, I'm still using black, and I'm just using just my brush, just putting on some dots. And if I put those dots even beyond where the branch is, your eye naturally will fill in that gap. So I'm just putting on dots, and that's in black with the same brush, my 0 brush. So you can see I'm putting them even beyond where the branch was drawn. And that will draw the eye in that direction. So I'm just going to work my way around the tree, putting on dots, giving the tree leaves. So you see in some cases I'm even going beyond where the branch is, and that will draw your eye in that area. And if you want to have the tree appear even fuller, you can put some dots even in the centers. And we have a brush coming up the side. So I'm going to paint that brush in. It's just a little scrub tree. And this is where your credit card or whatever card you've got to make some nice edges comes in. At the edge of the tree, I'm going to put in some extra black. So it's just fresh black, fairly wet. And I'm going to use my card. And I'm just going to pull up with my card and just give some nice grasses. And if it starts to make some white lines where you're actually lifting off paint, it's actually a very nice effect. Yeah. So see, there's some little white spaces in between where it's lifted paint off, and that's a nice effect. So remember, grasses don't all grow in the same direction. They go from right to left and cross over each other. And if you don't have a credit card and you need to use your brush to do it, that's fine. You can get a nice little whip with your brush that will work. And we need to tackle this moon. We want to do something with this moon, and this is a reflection in the water. So we don't want it to look like a moon and a moon or a sun and a sun. We want to cover over a little bit of this moon, and we want to drag some of that flow of water down into the bed of water. So I'm going to go into my ochre, very light ochre. And I'm going to do some sideways motion, just from side to side, very lightly, not covering over the whole moon. Just a little bit. So it's a reflection in the water. I'm going to run that ochre just to the edge of the water. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit of that same blue. And I'm going to run that same blue, very tiny markings down into the water. So I have that reflection coming right down into the water. Now you can put a little bit of that blue in with that ochre, but be careful it doesn't turn green. Now, if you're ready, I'd like to move over to where our red mountain is. And I'm going to do a little bit of lifting off. So I'm getting my brush wet. This is a number 3 brush, and then tapping it off on paper towel. So I'm getting it wet and then tapping it. I'm twisting and tapping it off. I'm not drying it completely, but I'm tapping it off. And I'm going to go into the red. Oh, I need a little bit more water. I tapped too much off. And I'm going to lift off a little bit of that red. I want to lighten some of this up to give the dimension of another mountain in front. And I want it to be a little bit lighter. So you can see already that that color is lifting off. So I just keep going back into my water, rinsing that brush, and then lifting off some more of that. I just want that little image of it lighter in the front. Just to give a little bit of brightness. And when you're adding that water piece to the paint, it has to lighten up. So we just have that brightness in there. I can maybe dab a little and see if I can get a brightness down below. There's a little bit of bright down there. So if you're able to do that, lifting off takes a little bit of work, or a little bit of practice. It's not really work, just a little bit of practice. And so now let's move on to our cactus picture. So these are cactuses. I'm using my number 3 brush. They're fairly wide. I'm going to make one cactus. Adding a second branch for a cactus, a kind of rounded.
Are you still using black, Cathy?
I am still using black. Sorry, I didn't
Okay.
identify that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Another piece of a cactus. This is a fairly thick one, so we're going to give it a nice solid bottom. And we'll make another cactus beside that one, nice tall one, way up into our picture. Again, if you don't have a steady hand, cactuses aren't straight, so you don't need to worry so much about that. Let's give this one a little bump out the side. And while we've got that black out, let's put a little bit at the bottom, all the way along, just a nice thin line of wet black paint. And back to our card, and we'll give some nice grasses. And remember, they don't all go straight, some go over. Now on my cactus, I have some thorns. So I'm using my zero brush. I'm just going to do some little thorns just coming out. So if when you have black on your brush, even if you're using a zero brush, if you tap your brush onto paper towel or onto another paper or your tray before you hit your canvas, you won't have that big blob of paint. So it's just short feathery strokes. And we don't need to do every section. You can just do random here and there. Some might have thorns, some might not. Well, some have thorns and some do not. They don't all have to have thorns. And then we want to recapture the sun in the center picture. So I'm using ochre. We used a light ochre in the background. So I'm using a deeper ochre, and I'm going to put that sun just coming out behind the mountain. So it's just peeking out. I guess it's more of a moon. And I want to transfer a little bit of this color that's on my brush just into the sky. And normally I would say sign your art, but we need to sign all 3 pieces of art. So go ahead and sign all 3 somewhere on your art. You decide where you want to put your signature. So I'm just going to touch up my mountain. It's got a little bit light on the side here, so I'm just going to touch that one up in my center. And I could play with this all day long. I could fiddle, I could add things, I could change things, I could lighten, I could darken. And maybe you feel the same. Sometimes you look at a picture and you think you could just carry on for a long time. But at this point, I'm going to stop and say, this is where we're at. So if I hold the 2 side by side, let's see. What do I have? So there's the 2 side by side. This is the one I sent you. This is the one I just did. So they're very similar, but they're not identical, and they're not supposed to be. So hopefully you're able to see those 2. Beautiful, beautiful color sky. Well, let me turn my camera. I enjoyed teaching that. I hope you enjoyed doing that. And it's so bright and colorful. I love it. We're going to close it up, and I'll see you next week. Bye now.